Well, we're in Santa Cruz, sort of.
Sort of.
Yeah, we're going to be riding the railroad, which is just outside of Santa Cruz.
Right.
Now, normally you can take the standard gauge trains from the boardwalk at Santa Cruz
Right.
to Roaring Camp or Campo Borracho. That's the case may be.
Roaring Camp.
It was originally called Campo Borracho.
Campo
Well,
Borracho.
that's another story.
Yeah.
Now it's called Roaring Camp,
Yes.
and there's a narrow gauge railroad there, the Roaring Camp and Big Trees steam railroad, logging railroad, just amazingly beautiful, beautiful place.
Yes.
So check this out, the Roaring Camp and Big Trees Railroad near Santa Cruz.
Yes.
Well, last week, of course, we were off at the Best of the West Antique Equipment Show.
Look at that equipment. Wow.
Isn't that neat
I
stuff?
love this stuff.
This was a ball. We'd actually been planning this trip for over a year. Some odd circumstances in our life kind of almost waylaid the
Yes,
trip.
right.
There's another story. But we had a lot of fun playing on Rob's Ranch, and the big thing at Rob's Ranch is the Pacific Coast Railway. And what we found was the whole show was really fun, but
Yeah.
the railroad is, I mean, come on, that's what really brought us.
Especially that little locomotive.
Isn't that the
It's
darn
just
cutest
stinking
thing?
cute.
All three of Rob's locomotives were built for movies and that sort of thing. I think one of them might have come off an amusement park, but they were all built for movies. But now they're on Rob's Ranch and just having an enormous amount of fun. Now the guys running the railroad were all volunteers. A couple of these guys were from Disneyland.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that fun?
That is fun.
They run the railroad there, but one of the guys was from the Big Trees Railroad, the Roaring Camp and
Right.
Big Trees, and he said, "You guys should come on up."
We didn't plan on that.
We weren't
but
planning
no.
on it, but it was close by, so we headed on up to Roaring Camp. Now, as is our tradition,
There we are.
we were last out.
Yes.
But then that just meant that we were first in when we got to Roaring Camp, and what a fun, wonderful place that is. The railroad opened in 1963. It was built by a guy named Norman Clark, and Norman Clark was a rail enthusiast back in the 1950s, and he'd had some connections in Los Angeles with creating the Travel Town.
Wow.
And that's a fun place there at Griffith Park in Los Angeles. But he had a hankering to build his own railroad, and he loved logging railroads, narrow gauge logging railroads, and he wanted to build an entire western town up in the Redwood trees. So he
Gee.
came up here in '58 and literally started laying track for this railroad and acquiring locomotives.
Wow.
But it's essentially a giant model railroad. It's Norman Clark's screwing around project.
That would be my dream.
The railroad has two Shays, a Heisler, and a nifty little plantation engine. At least those are the ones that run. There's
Right.
a lot of bits and pieces lying around of other
Oh, boy.
engines. But the number 7 here was the last engine acquired. They didn't actually get this until 1985.
Oh, my goodness.
It was originally a Westside Lumber Company, Shay, but they had bought it used from the Butte and Plumas, Butte.
Are we talking about tail feathers or what?
I guess Butte and Plumas logging railroad, and then it went to the Westside Lumber Company.
There you go.
But they brought it here because it's a big, massive 3-truck Shay, and they needed this kind of power because at that point they had a 9.5% grade, and this engine can actually pull a 9.5% grade.
Oh, my.
Kind of a long story how they ended up with a 9.5% grade. We'll have to come back to that.
Yeah.
So Norman Clark had built this railroad in the Redwood trees up here. The original camp here, the Roaring Camp, was built by Isaac Graham, who'd come to the area around 1842. He'd opened a sawmill and a still.
A still sawmill.
A still sawmill. Well, you had to have something to drink. But all of the Anglos, all of the people from the States kind of formed together here in the redwood trees, and the local Mexicans dubbed their camp Campo Borracho.
Oh, no.
On account of the still. You're the Spanish-speaking one among
the
us.
Borracho's drunk.
Yeah, that was the drunkard's camp. But Isaac was particularly upset about that, so he went to the local authorities. He said, well, how about Roaring Camp instead of Campo Borracho?
Either one's fine.
Oh, okay. But this is where all the people from the States hung out. Everybody else here was Mexican. But these guys had a sawmill and a distillery, and as the legend goes, they made quite a nice single malt whiskey.
Oh, my goodness.
And drank it a lot.
What, no cerveza?
Interestingly, Isaac Graham had come here from Victor, Idaho.
Victor?
He lived in Pierre's Hole, now known as Victor, Idaho, and he was one of those crazy mountain men.
Oh boy!
That hung out up there with Pierre.
Oh gee!
No last name given. But he came here to open his sawmill.
Oh.
Fortunately, in 1865, the forest here was acquired by Henry Cowell, who opted to not cut down the old-growth redwood. The legend says his wife said, you can't cut down the pretty trees. But one way or the other, he spared them, and so we have one of these few stands of old-growth redwoods here.
Well, thank goodness.
Preserved. Now, this is what you call a burned-down trestle.
How'd that happen?
Yeah, look at that thing. They had quite a fire here in 1977, and this major trestle burned down. And rather than rebuild the trestle, they opted to put this line in and back up it. It's a switchback at 9.5% grade.
I could not believe that.
And here we are backing up the 9.5% grade to avoid having to go around the loop, which now would cross the burned trestle.
Woohoo! It fall to the bottom.
But there you go. We just backed up a 9.5% grade, and now we're back on the main line to Bear Mountain.
Right.
This whole place is now a state park, the Henry Cowell Redwood State Park, and the state parks people didn't want the wood trestle rebuilt. They said if you rebuild it, you got to build it out of steel.
Oh, gee.
And they didn't want to build a steel bridge, so they just said, well, we'll just replace it with a switchback.
Oh.
Number 7 here, the Sonora, is a Shay, a 3-truck Shay. Notice it's got powered wheels under a tender. Not a typical configuration for a Shay. There were 3 kinds of geared locomotives used on logging railroads: Heislers, Climaxes, and Shays. And the Shays were by far the most popular with the logging railroads. There were a lot of Shays running around. And some of those were these great big huge 3-truck Shays like this one. But number 7 is just a beautiful, beautiful locomotive. Very properly restored and maintained.
And lucky you was invited to the cab.
Yeah, I got to climb up in there. And, oh my goodness. They have a program here where you can actually join them in the cab.
Oh boy.
For a ride. It costs $150.
Yeah,
But
hey.
that's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, next time we're out there,
yeah, you can spend $150 on tires.
Throw
Just
some money around and let's get up in there and go for a ride.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 vertical units here on the side of the Shay are the cylinders. Like all steam locomotives, they're a dual action thing. They push and pull.
Right.
So effectively, it's like having 6 cylinders.
Kind of like a 6-cylinder vehicle. They always had more power.
Yeah, so these
Not so
things
much
are
speed, but
just
power.
brutally powerful. And then they can be geared down because the engine is not directly connected to the wheels and using the wheels as a crankshaft. In this case, there's an actual crankshaft, just like you'd find in an internal combustion engine. And the valving and all of the mechanism here runs through this engine unit. And then there's a drive shaft here that connects the crankshaft through gearboxes to the wheels to drive the locomotive forward. Wow. That way you can achieve a gear reduction off of 6 cylinders, and boy does that make these things brutally powerful.
Wow, yeah.
Notice that the boiler has to be set over to the side, which is another unique feature of a Shay, to make room for the engine unit. Anyway, it's kind of neat to think that this whole logging railroad never once logged a tree. These are all preserved stands of trees with a toy railroad running through here, a model railroad, if you will. It was built to look like a logging railroad, but it never functioned as a logging railroad.
But it's fun.
Just as a toy.
It's just a big toy. That's neat.
A big model railroad.
There you go.
Well, we had a ball.
Oh, we certainly did.
And it was just kind of a spontaneous thing.
That's the best
we
fun.
Were invited up and we came.
Yes.
But they really weren't open for the season yet, so they're all just running the one engine. So we need to get back up there when they're running.
That's right.
Yeah, because we want to see all 4 engines
Absolutely.
running. That'll be fun. So there it is, the big trees.
Wow, that was
Campo
cool.
Borracho, big trees.
Oh my.
Yeah, Roaring Camp and Big Trees
That was
Railway.
fun.
What a beautiful place.
Yes.
And how fortunate that somehow those trees were salvaged,
Oh,
saved,
no
and
kidding.
preserved.
Just beautiful.
Just a lucky coincidence that happened exactly the way it did. And
Talk about fresh air.
oh,
They can't bottle that into an air freshener.
And
That's really cool.
the smell of redwood trees.
Oh, no kidding.
Jeez, it's
Yeah.
got their own unique aroma, I'll tell you what. Just beautiful.
Really
Just
pretty.
just amazing.
Absolutely.
Well, if you haven't been over to the channel, you want to get on over to the channel. There's 200,
200.
a little over 200
Oh,
movies
yeah.
over there. All of them brilliant, like the Big Trees
The big trees.
video
Yeah,
here.
that
So
was
you'll enjoy all 200. You can go over there and binge watch them.
Yeah.
And the easy way to get over there, now if you're not a subscriber, this will make you a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, it'll just take you over there. But either way, the blue button, zoink, see the blue button that popped in? If you're not seeing it, it's because it isn't there.
You're on yourself.
It's on your device. But on most devices, a blue button just popped in
Yes.
and it says subscribe, makes you a subscriber, takes you to the channel where you can binge watch 200 other movies.
Yes. And eat popcorn.
And eat popcorn. Well, we're not sure how you found this movie on the internet. We hope you didn't find it boring. And we will see you here again in 1 week with some more significant, massive screwing around. We'll see you then.
Bye.
Bye-bye.